Alright guys, you already know it's your boy Joe back at it again, and man, we're gonna continue with the fifth part of this, this series, which is the view, right? But to learn about the view, we need to learn what is a template engine. And for Adonis.js, the template engine is called Nunjucks, right? So Nunjucks is a template engine created by Mozilla. It's widely used. It's pretty much, once you learn one template engine, you will learn all the other ones. The purpose of a template engine is basically to generate code from the back end to to what the client sees, right? Let's start with this. Basically, we want to get syntax highlighting. So let's say you on Atom, right? And you say, hey, HTML, right? You go HTML, and then you have a closing tag, and let's say an example. You have body, right now the file doesn't have an extension, so the basically Atom doesn't know what type of file it is, so it can't give you highlighting of it, right? So highlighting basically just, it shows you what type of tags they are, or like, let's say, it's so much better to read code like this, right? So let's say an example. Once we put highlighting, syntax highlighting, you see, now we know exactly what tags they are, because it knows, hey, this person is writing in HTML, the language, right? So that's what we're doing with basically Nunjucks now. We're going to get syntax highlighting for, the Nunjucks files. So Nunjucks files are usually NJK. So what we do is we go to preferences, right? And we search. I'll type in Nunjucks. Oops. Now that will give you syntax highlighting for Nunjucks. So install this template engine language file for Atom, and then now when you come to a file that's basically NJK, is going to give you the highlighting, right? Let's understand the syntax, right? So let's say we want to print a variable to the HTML, right? From the controllers to the HTML, we will say something like this: name, and then you put it inside of two curly brackets, right? This variable, and put inside the block, right? So it will actually show up on the page. So let's say we're using H2 and we want to print out name, the variable name. Now we go to controllers, we go to routes, make sure that we connect into basically the about method. Remove this. All right, now let's switch this to about. Let's go to the pages controller. You get here to the pages controller where you're saying, hey, once you come to the pages controller, I want you to give me the about method, right? So when the about method runs, basically what it's saying, hey, when this route hits here, slash about, basically send the view about, which is the about template here, and basically there's a variable named name, and then inside of that variable is called Joe, right? Inside of it, there's the property name is Joe. So now when we come here, what is going to say, hey, once it lands on the page, it's going to automatically send that variable here. So now, because we have that variable named Joe, named name, we're basically showing it here, right? So it says Joe on the H2, right? And as you can see, it's in the HTML. You see, H2. You see? So that's how variables work in Nunjucks. The part from syntax is basically tags, right? So let's say we have an if statement, right? We say if logged in, right? Instead of having two curly brackets, right? Now we're gonna use the tag. So we say, hey, curly bracket, percent, and then we put in the tag, and then there's a variable, and then from there we have a closing of closing of the tag. So let's say it's just basically running JavaScript for the view. So you will say, hey, if logged in, user is logged in, print user is logged in now, else user is not logged in. All right. So that's just to, be able to be in connect with the server and use the variables for the page. Now let's see what it shows. All right. It shows user is not logged in. All right. And that's because we have logged in equals to false. Now let's say we wanted to run true. All right. It's going to say user is not logged in because we have to restart the server, right? You see it's still showing that. Now if we come back here, we click Control C, stop the server, and then we say npm start. Now we restarted the whole server, right? Now let's say we changed it to true. Now this is supposed to change. User is logged in. User is logged in. Use tags, right? Now remember, you could come to the documentation, look through here, you could use for loops, there's a whole bunch of stuff. Just go through the documentation, play around with it, right? I just showed you the basics of how to use a tag on basically Nunjucks. Let's say we wanted to add a header to this, right? We're not going to go manually and say, hey, on every about page, like on every single page, on the about or welcome and the contact page, we're going to put in the header. So what we do is we create basically a master layout, which is this, right? So that's why it's named master. So we have that master layout and we say, hey, we want to add a header here, and we say header, and then we put in a link / about, say about. We're going to add the home, and contact, right? So now what this is doing basically is going to show up in every single page, right? So now it shows up in every single page. Now what if we wanted to basically change the title? We want the title to show up differently for every single page. So then what we do is we create another block, which is just a tag named block, and basically we put in the name of what we want to call it. So we say, hey, we want to call this block title, right? So now when we come to the about page, we say, hey, block title, name it about page, right? So let's go back a little bit, right? So we're in the about page, right? So what this is saying right here is saying, hey, extends master. So what you're saying, hey, this is a child of the master layout. So all you want is this information to show up in depending on the block that they're on. So let's say block title shows up on the block title, and the block content shows up on the block content. So that's what you put in here. You're saying, okay, block title show up here on this block title, and then the block content show on the block content. So now let's say we wanted to change this too, and we wanted to add a little footer, right? We copy this, right? We go copy and say footer. We go, this is the footer, right? So now we come here and we copy this and we say, hey, we want this to show up after, and we're gonna name this footer. So now on every page we have this option to put in, put our content inside of those blocks, right? So we say, hey, when I come to the about page, change the title, put in the content, and show me the footer, but never change the top, because this is going to change. It's going to stay the same no matter what page you're on. Easy to maintain. So let's say an example, we wanted to change it to the header and say, hey, we want to add an email link. Now we don't have to go and add it to every single page. We just change it on the master layout, and those changes passes down to all the other pages. So let's see here, and we go to about. You see the changes is there. So that's like the simple way of dealing with template engines. Any question, make sure you leave a comment. Let me know what you think. I only got a few seconds before this thing stops. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like this video, man. Bye.